Welcome to episode 7 of the Chartered Show. Today I'm joined by financial planning specialist Stephanie Ferreira, and we're going to be talking about different life stages and when you're earning a different amount to your partner. How do you have those conversations around who should be paying for what and what's fair? Welcome, Stephanie.
Thanks, Kim. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Maybe we could start, since you have lots of these conversations in your meetings, at the different life stages. I mean, for you, when do these kind of conversations need to happen?
Sure. I would say from both personal experience and through experience.
Always more
with
hard
our
when
clients.
it's personal experience.
Absolutely. But I think the minute that you move in with somebody, obviously that becomes a point where a lot of your expenses are naturally shared. When you're living separately, I think it's a lot easier to navigate. But the minute you live together, it's who pays for rent or who's paying the rates and the taxes and the levies and the water, lights, etc. Then you reach the stage where there's joint expenses. And now how do you split them?
And how do you have the conversation always about what you're earning? So I also know from a lot of relationships and couples that I've chatted to, and they don't necessarily always tell each other what they're earning.
Look, I suppose it is a subjective thing, and there's what I have learned is when we're talking about money, it's obviously something that's deeply personal, and people have various different relationships with money, as you as a specialist in this field would know. And so what people want to disclose is obviously going to differ from person to person and what they think is right or wrong, even though there isn't really a right or wrong. But I think for me what's more important is having the conversation more around the expenses and what's fair in terms of how you split your expenses and how you save, and I guess just what you want to work towards with your money.
I suppose that for me is the big point of what you want to do with your money. So maybe sitting and talking about what you're trying to achieve together.
100%. So that for me is always the first part too, because if you've got a plan that works a little bit together as a couple, so what are the goals, what do we hope to achieve over the next year, what do we hope to achieve over the next 5 years, whatever the case is. For some people it might be squashing debt, for others it might be having lots and lots of experiences. But if you can create goals, then you can direct your money to the right places, and already as a couple you already on way more of the same page than what you would have been without those goals.
And what you're saying is that this starts from when you start living together. And isn't it a much better place that you start having these conversations early on in your relationship? Because I think sometimes if the longer we go on, it's when it becomes harder to have them.
It's always the unspoken conversations that cause the most problems.
Okay, so now we're having the conversations, we've got our goals in place, we know what our expenses are. But we haven't got to the really juicy part yet of now we're earning different amounts. So how do we contribute to those expenses if we're not earning the same as our partner?
Sure. So people do this very differently. So I'll give you an idea of the classic cases that I see. The two most common ones are some people prefer to split expenses 50-50. So whatever the joint expenses are, you cover half, I cover half. Whatever you have left is yours to do with as you please, whether it's holidays, buying a car and what have you. The other way that people often do it is proportionately. So if you put the incomes together and your income makes up 60%, mine makes up 40%, I only cover 40% of the expenses. Those are the two most common ways.
Because you still need to be
it.
also having your investments.
Exactly.
So if you would be contributing 50-50, you wouldn't be able to be having the investments because you would be putting all your money to expenses.
I'm trying very hard not to have an opinion because obviously everybody works differently. But it's about, and again, because I have my own views of subjectively what I think is fair, and each couple needs to have the conversation on what they think is fair.
And worry not about what other people are doing, but have the conversation as a couple together.
And it becomes a lot harder as you make your way through different life stages, because now if you add a child into the mix, it's not just household expenses, it's school fees and all the costs related to the child. And if one spouse takes a step back from their career
and isn't working, isn't earning any income.
Exactly. Now, how do you make sure it's fair in terms of, because now one spouse maybe isn't earning income, then making sure that both spouses, for me, the most important thing is that both spouses feel independent in some way, shape or form, regardless of how the money is run, and that they feel that it's fair. And
I think for me, the big thing, and the word you just used,
fairness.
And I was just going to say it, is the fairness. And the fairness can only come through open conversations.
Exactly. So one possible way, because one area where I know can often these conversations and how people run it causes some issues, is keeping track of, okay, well, when did you pay for groceries and when did I pay for groceries, or you got this meal, I got that meal, which seems really silly, but often people don't speak about it, and then they build up this resentment because they're like, one person's completely unaware, and I'm like, but I bought the last 5 meals.
I think
and
the silent resentment is probably the biggest impact, and hurts this more than when you just have the conversation and nip it in the bud.
100%. So what I do personally, and I find it works really, really well, because I just got really tired of having to go like, is it your turn, my turn? Is we created a joint account, so whether it's a joint account or an additional credit card, and we put all our money for joint expenses into that joint account, and we both have a card, so whether we're out for dinner or we're buying groceries, we're both tapping off the same account.
So there's an our money pot.
Exactly.
For those kind of expenses.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what you were saying earlier is if you're earning proportionately differently, you'd contribute to that pot proportionately differently because of the different salary that you're earning.
Or 50-50 if that's how you split your expenses.
Whichever the decision is. And I suppose then maybe we go to the next life stage, and that is when you've actually chosen to get married. And then we all choose different marriage contracts and different ways to get married, which we're not going into today on the show. But it's then having those conversations around what is the expectation of me and what is the expectation of you when we want to have children, how we're going to do it differently. So again, it's having the conversation.
And I was going to say right at the beginning, Kim, that I can give the simple solution and make a really short Chartered show.
I don't think we want that, because I'm sure it's going to be judgmental.
Because at the real core of all of this is actually just choosing to be brave and continuously have the conversations. And obviously today we've spoken about workarounds like setting goals and different ways on how you split it and making sure each person feels valued. But it's all about choosing to have the conversation.
And maybe I want to add one thing, and I can't help myself ever, because I do think that the value of having a financial planner is so important here as well, because so many times with these money conversations, there's so many emotions and so much triggering happening that often when you're working with a financial planner who's more objective, I think we behave better.
Definitely. Definitely. The inner child maybe comes out less.
So again, what we're saying is, whether you're married, whether you're living together, or whether you're anticipating any of these life transitions, it's really important just to be having the conversations, have the financial planner to have them with. But I think maybe there's another level to this whole discussion as well. And when we look at that other level, it's around you as a couple. Because you as a couple are different to what other couples are.
Exactly. And what do you as a couple want from life? Which actually, at the end of the day, it links back to having a financial planner who's helping you navigate, well, what is it that you want to achieve? Because then you're building all your finances around what you want to achieve. And with somebody who's being objective to say, okay, well, we need to, maybe it's building investments in both names, or setting up an investment for this purpose or that purpose, or whatever the case is. But you've got someone objectively helping you work towards what you as a couple actually want to achieve, but also taking into account, I think, as financial planners, we don't just disregard maybe people's beliefs around money either. So we're not here to change people's ways in which they want to work, but we almost building a plan with what they want to achieve and taking into account how they work as a couple.
And maybe one thing I just want to add to that, and it's maybe an area that I work on so much, is around what beliefs you've come into the relationship with. So for many of us, we come into a relationship having seen what our parents did. And when we come into that relationship, our partners come in with a whole lot of different other experiences. Now we've come in with those, and now we're trying to navigate our own way, and it's to start clearly with what is ours, and so that when we get triggered by the past, we don't blame it on our partner. We rather look at the self-growth for ourselves and maybe look at how we're getting triggered from our past beliefs that we've picked up around money.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head, Kim. One other area that is really important from a psychological perspective around money is not attaching your value or worth to what you earn in terms of your paycheck. Because certainly what we find through learning experiences with clients and in our own lives is that each person brings a different value to the relationship. So even if it is a mother who decides to take a step back from her career, she's doing so much still at home. She's raising kids, she's doing groceries, she's covering a lot of things. That's enabling maybe her partner to then continue with his career and earn. She might not be earning a paycheck, but she's still adding value to the family and to the household.
Our worth is not tied to how much we're earning.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for joining us on the show. And we do hope it's been interesting. But more, what we do hope is that you start having these conversations if you're not having them, and find a place to do it where you both feel comfortable. And it's not a question of you pointing fingers at each other or judging each other. It's because you really want the best for each other and you want the best for your relationship going forward. So again, thank you very much, Steph. Thank you very much to the listeners, and we hope you'll join us on the next show.